Welcome everyone to this London Borough of Redbridge Virtual Planning Committee meeting. Members of the public who are watching the meeting tonight, who can access the agenda online. The agenda contains officers' report, which have been read by all members prior to this meeting. I would also like to request everyone in the meeting to turn off your microphones unless you're speaking. It may be that an officer will have to turn off the microphones which are left on. When you need to speak, please remember to unmute your microphone. Also, you can use the chat functions or raise your hand if you wish to speak or type your questions. I would like to remind all members that you need to hear all the evidence in each cases we are considering tonight. You also need to be seen throughout the proceedings, so please keep your camera on at all times unless there's a technical issue. This means that you should listen to the whole debate. This is a legal requirement, and I'll be asking you to confirm that you have heard the whole debate before you vote on any matters this evening. As the chair, I'll be running the meeting and I will invite people to speak. It is important that people do not speak over each other, and I will ensure that everyone is given ample opportunity to speak. The exception to this is where planning officers or the committee lawyer may turn on their microphones to alert me as the chair to any legal, governance or planning issues that needs to be addressed. I will ask each councillor in turn to introduce themselves and the ward that you represent in London Borough of Redbridge in alphabetical order, and to confirm that you're able to hear the proceeding. Now I'll ask Councillor Bamra. Please, can you introduce yourself?
Councillor Goodell Bambra, Clayhall Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Bamra. Councillor Canal.
I can hear you loud and clear. I'm from Bridgewall, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Canal. Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear everything clearly. I'm Councillor Chowdhury and I represent Chadwell Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Duffel.
Councillor Michael Duffel from South Woodford, and I can hear you loud and clearly.
Thank you, Councillor Duffel. My name is Councillor Josna Islam and I'm the Chair for Planning Committee, and I'm sure you can hear me loud and clear. Thank you. Councillor Mary.
Evening, Chair. I can see and hear fine. This is Councillor Paul Merry from Wanstead Park Ward and Vice Chair of Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Mary. Councillor Morgan Thomas.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Daniel Morgan Thomas from Wanstead Village Ward, and I can confirm I can see and hear everything. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan Thomas. Councillor Prakash.
Ayodhya Prakash, Councillor for Mayfield Ward. I can hear you, okay? Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Prakash. Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Chair. It's Councillor Shobh Patel representing Ilford Town Ward, and I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you, Councillor Patel. We've got Councillor Javed deputising for Councillor Singh Bowler. Councillor Javed.
Chair, thank you. Good evening. I can see and hear you well, and yes, I'm substituting for Councillor Bowler. And I represent Chelmsford Ward in Ilford South.
Thank you, Councillor Javed. Councillor Rashid.
Yes, I am Councillor Rashid for Loxford Ward. I can hear you clearly. I'm subbing for Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Councillor Rashid. Thank you. Now I will ask council employees to introduce themselves, starting with planning officers.
Good evening, Chair and members. I'm Brett Leahy, the Head of Service for Planning and Building Control. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
Hi, Liz Sullivan, DM Manager.
Thank you. Liz?
Hi, Andrew Smith, Principal Planner in Development Management.
Thank you, Andrew. Farhan?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mags Herring, Clerk and Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you, Maggie. Highways?
Good evening, Chair. My name is William Howe and I work in the Council's Transport Policy team.
Thank you, Will. Legal?
Evening, Chair, members. Andrew Swaffer, committee lawyer. Did we hear from Farhan?
We haven't heard from Farhan. Or...
Apologies, I was on mute and I didn't realize.
Hello,
sorry.
hello, Farhan. You're a planning officer in the planning team, aren't you?
Yes. Hi, this is Farhan Coggins, planning officer, DM management.
Okay, thank you, Farhan. Sadia?
Hi, I'm Sadia Nishu, lead principal planner DM team.
Okay, thank you, Andrew, for pointing it out. We also have officers acting in producing role for the technical side of the meeting, but as they are not expected to be involved in the discussion of the meeting, I won't ask them to introduce themselves, but would thank them for supporting us throughout this evening. Members, in the event of any technical difficulties where less than a quorum of members are able to hear the meeting, it will be adjourned until such time the technical difficulties are resolved, up to a maximum of 15 minutes. If technical issues cannot be resolved within that time, then the meeting will be adjourned to another date, or the remaining items of this business will be deferred to the next meeting. Just to remind speakers, if you break the public participation rules, as the chair, I will issue you with a warning. If you continue to disregard the rules, it will be either myself as the chair or the Democratic Service or scrutiny officers will end the speaker's connection, thereby removing you as the speaker from the meeting, and you will not be able to regain access to the meeting as a participant. Maggie, do we have any apologies?
Just as set out by councillors, apologies from Councillor Singh Bowler, subbed by Councillor Javid, and apologies from Councillor S. Ali, subbed by Councillor Rashid.
Thank you. Due to conflict of interest, Councillor Singh Bowler will not be present at this meeting. Hence, we've got Councillor Mohammed Jabed subbing for him. And we have Councillor Ali, who is not very well affected by the coronavirus. So we've got Councillor Rashid subbing for her. So our agenda item 2, declaration of interest. Members in attendance are reminded of the requirement to consider whether they have any interest in any matter on the agenda that needs to be disclosed. And if so, to declare an interest when the committee reaches that item on the agenda. Where an application falls within a member's ward, that member must declare as such and confirm that they are able to determine the application in an unbiased way. Okay, agenda item 3, minutes of previous meeting held on 2nd of February 2001. Are we okay with the minutes? Committee members?
Can I make a declaration?
When we reach the agenda item? Councillor Balmer?
Yeah, just two issues regarding one of the application. I did go to visit myself and a good look around, and also drove around the area to look at parking. Additionally, I've received reports from the unions and other people which I've read thoroughly, but I haven't made up mind, so mine is still open.
Thank you,
Councillor Bamra. Which application was that, please?
That's the second application, the Montreal College one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Balmer.
Councillor Balmer, thank you. Just as a reminder, in the future, let's deal with each conflict of interest as they arise. So we'll deal with them in turn, but thank you for identifying that, and we don't need to hear from you any further. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Are we okay with the minutes dated 2nd of February?
Yeah, I'll move to accept, Chair.
Thank you. We do have a public participator, Mr. Walker. Mr. Walker, you have 2 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. First off, Andrew Swaffer stopped me from speaking at the last meeting. I suggest that means if he's like a chair, he should be in interest like councillors. If any councillor wants to pick up on that, I'd be grateful. My main point this evening is the Cameron judgment. I'm interested in if that's binding upon this council, and I'll be seeking support from councillors to seek advice about the implications of the Cameron judgment. If you're not aware of it, it's where a mum took Manchester Council to court to stop a development because on air quality grounds. The mum won, Gemma. Why it's interesting is because the judge didn't just rely upon legal limits. He talked about a duty of care, and it was clear to the judge that building a development by a school was going to be damaging to children's health. And he brought in a new bar, or a new benchmark, as it were. Councils have to look after vulnerable children. It might be for hearing, it might be for respiratory stuff, anything where a child is vulnerable. To my knowledge, having studied applications in the past, the council's never set such a high bar. I say it should do in future. Manchester disgracefully is appealing against it. The press reports indicate, because they're concerned it is a precedent, which suggests that Redbridge might be open to action if it's found out that it is binding in due course. That's the point. I've been grateful to you for allowing me to speak. Be grateful to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Do members of the committee have any questions for Mr. Walker? Councillor Cannell.
Mr. Walker, thank you for, as ever, your intervention. My understanding of the Cameron case is that it regarded the building of a 12,000 space car park, and the pressure group successfully applied to have that set aside by JR. And quite often, your interventions, sir, are based around the Tesco development, which, as I understand it, involves the removal of a car park and therefore less pollution. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are that, of course, the Tesco development involves a school on the site, and I would say any reasonable judge. Well, my point is the council now has a duty to go beyond the legal limits and work out by reasonable benchmarks whether children with respiratory illness or hearing illness would be adversely impacted upon by any of these developments. For example, the council has a duty to study if there's a correlation between respiratory illness and children living beside roads. And that's quite easy to look at by going to BHRUT, the hospital trust, to look at child admissions. Superficial analysis suggests it supports existing evidence that if you're right beside a school, right beside a road, the child is more likely to go to A&E with respiratory illnesses. So I'm saying that the council needs to improve its game on child health. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Just to, before you go, Mr. Walker, Andrew Swaffer is the council legal representative, and sometimes he will intervene to support the planning committee in relation to any issues, as I was saying earlier on. So I couldn't recall what was said, but he has that role to play to safeguard the planning committee. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Our next agenda item, we have two planning applications. The first application is 4462 2043 to 45 Clarence Avenue and rear of Montrose House, 412 to 416 Eastern Avenue. Sadia, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair.
Before Sadia comes in, This is Councillor Javed. I wish to declare interest.
Yes.
I received a phone call from the Montrose College. Having already accepted your offer to substitute, I told them I could not discuss the application, therefore terminated the call. Secondly, I made a site visit today in my own time to educate myself again of that area and the location.
Thank you, Councillor Javed. Before we start, I've got our Head of Planning. Brett, would you like to step in here?
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. I just wanted to give members an update before the presentation by Sadia in terms of a call-in request. So I wanted to make members aware that we have a call-in request has been made by an external party to the Secretary of State for this plan application. The Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government has the power to take over, or what they call in, a plan application rather than let council or letting the council decide. And in this case, planning committee decide. So when it comes to call-in, if a call-in is successful, so basically the Secretary of State decides to call in the application, this is only normally done when the application conflicts with national policy in important ways or is nationally significant. So what does that mean for tonight's planning committee? As advised by the Secretary of State, so we're being in dialogue, whilst they assess the call-in request, we can proceed with planning committee tonight. However, we cannot issue a decision notice. And so as your head of planning, and at the request of the Secretary of State, I have formally confirmed in writing we will not issue the decision notice until advised by the Secretary of State. However, and I repeat, and as advised by the Secretary of State, we can still proceed with planning committee tonight for this item. We just don't have the power to issue the decision notice until advised by the Secretary of State. I hope that's clear. Happy to answer any questions. If there's no questions, then I'm happy for Sadia to proceed with the presentation. Thank you.
Councillor Cannell, you've got your hands up.
I must confess, I'm surprised to hear it's been called in.
Well, sorry, Councillor Cannell, they're considering the call-in. So the call-in request has been made by an external party to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State is currently considering whether to call it in. And whilst they consider the call-in, they basically have advised and wanted me to confirm in writing we wouldn't issue the decision notice. So I've confirmed that in writing for them. I advised it was due to go to planning committee tonight. They have advised that we can proceed with planning committee as long as we don't issue the decision notice. Right. I hope that provides clarity.
So the advice is we can proceed, but the advice isn't that we must proceed. My preference, and I would formally move in that case, that we defer this item until such time as the Secretary of State reaches their decision and move on to the next item of Sylvan Road. I don't see much point in us allow me to conclude, please, Chair, if you'd be so kind. I don't see much point in us spending 30, 40, 50 minutes or more deliberating it when we then can't issue a decision notice. So I formally move we adjourn this item until this issue is resolved.
Councillor Cannell, I suggest we listen to the planning officer presentation before we make that judgment call, because
Chair, I've made a formal motion to adjourn. If there's a seconder, we should go to a vote with the greatest respect.
Okay, so procedurally, just before we ask for a seconder, I'd like to refer this to Andrew and Brett.
Yeah, so two things there. Councillor Cannell is more than entitled to propose whichever deferment he wishes to. You need someone else to second, no doubt he'll get that. And then we move to a vote on that issue. My worry is that if the council don't determine within an appropriate time, there are issues of non-determination by way of an appeal. and I'm of the view that those appeal prospects are slim, and I would prefer this council to state their position publicly before any determination by the mayor. It is highly unlikely that the mayor will call this in. They didn't in Bodgers, for example. They won't even in Tesco. And so they certainly won't in this particular application. So please bear that in mind.
Thank you, Andrew. Any seconders?
Chair, shall we get a seconder and take the vote?
Yes. Any seconders for Councillor Connell's motion?
I'm happy to second it.
Okay, Councillor Duffel. We've got Councillor Duffel seconding the motion. We will now need to go to a vote. I will be asking members of the planning committee in alphabetical order.
Sorry, Chair, I did have a question before. I was hoping to get it before it was seconded for either Brett or Andrew. Okay. Because it will affect how I vote.
Okay, go on, Councillor Morgan Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. It's just it's the implications sort of the other way of what Andrew's just said, but for whether there's an implication for deferring if the Secretary of State decides not to call it in, what are the timescales for how quickly the committee would have to deal with it? I mean, I assume we can have an extraordinary meeting if it needs to be dealt with swiftly, but it's just to know, because if it's going to be dealt, if the Secretary of State's going to make a decision tomorrow, then it seems worth deferring it tonight. But if it's likely to take so long that it puts us in jeopardy that way, then I would rather we did discuss it tonight, if that makes sense.
Brett, would you like to come in, please? Councillor Prakash, I'll come to you in a minute. Brett, would you like to respond to this?
Yeah, so the unfortunately the Secretary of State's given no particular time frame in terms of when they will confirm whether or not they will call the application in. All I can advise is what they've advised me today, that they didn't have any issue of us proceeding with planning committee tonight, and they've asked for the outcome of planning committee to be fed back to them once planning committee has considered the application. But in terms of time frame, I've been given no time frame at this stage. It's all happened very, very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that clear, Councillor Morgan Thomas?
Apologies, I said the Mayor of London was calling this in. Of course, it's a Secretary of State to call in rather than the Mayor of London. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay. Councillor Prakash, does that answer your question?
No. Chair, could the officer repeat what is the motion? That's one thing. The second question is why it has to come from the Secretary of State. Was there appeal? Did the applicant appealed for the previous decision?
Councillor Prakash, Brett already, the head of planning, have already explained earlier on. I'll ask Brett if he can repeat himself again. Thank you. Brett.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. So normally a call-in tends to be developments of much larger scale, a bit like the coal mine that's been in the news recently up north. So normally call-ins from the Secretary of State are to do with issues of great significance. Now, what's happened is an external party has written to the Secretary of State and asked for the Secretary of State to call in this particular application, because this external party is of the view that this is of great significance. Now, the Secretary of State is duty bound, therefore, to consider whether the application is called in. Now, as advised by the Secretary of State on Friday afternoon, that they've had this request and therefore they need to consider this request. They asked for me to confirm in writing that I won't issue the decision notice, which I've done. I advised them it was going to planning committee tonight, and they advised me that we can continue with planning committee. They're interested in the outcome of planning committee. So that's where we are, and I hope that provides a bit more clarity on the subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. I've got Councillor Jabez, followed by Councillor Mary. Councillor Jabez.
Thank you, Chair. I need to go back to Andrew's legal advisor. He referred to determination. Are we in time for determination currently? And how long do we have? a leeway, if you like, if we were not to make a decision tonight. I am a bit sympathetic to what Councillor Knall has proposed, because otherwise it makes a bit messy, if you like. But at the same time, I'm concerned that if we don't decide, we're out of time, if you like, and then the applicant can actually claim expenses, etc. So I need a clarification, please.
Thank you. The answer is I don't know. I don't know where we are in terms of the process, in terms of how long we've got to consider the application. You'll have to ask the planners, Liz. I need to just reiterate, it is highly, highly unlikely that the Secretary of State will consider this scheme of national policy importance or national significance.
Thank you.
And Brett's already said, effectively, he said, they're waiting to see what the committee does before they do anything.
Thank you, Andrew. I've got Councillor Merry.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to speak against Councillor Canal's proposal on the basis of the advice that we've received from planning, from the head of planning and from Mr. Swaffer. I think it's extremely dangerous if we risk deferring this and moving outside of the timescale and being able to determine this ourselves. So I would suggest we move to the vote as fast as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Merry. I've got Liz, your hand up. Liz?
Thanks, Chair. I've been advised that the 28th of April is the expiry date.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go quickly.
Need to go to the vote now.
Yes, we are. So the motion is that to defer the application. Yes, Councillor Canal? The motion you referred to.
You're seeking me to vote or to do what, Chair?
So what was the motion? So your request was
the motion was to defer the application until the Secretary of State forms a view. I note the remarks by Brett, but of course this is already appealed for an early decision last year, so I don't see the jeopardy around that. So my motion is to defer until this issue is resolved, thereby saving us an hour and a half potentially of consideration for no reason at all.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, and we have our seconder, Councillor Duffel.
Councillor Duffel.
So I'll pass to our chair to take the vote.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Balmer, are you in support of this motion or against, Councillor Balmer?
Can I first of all ask the question to confirm that if we do defer it, then it's still got to be dealt with by 28th of April, no later than that?
That will be our last question on this because we're in the middle of voting. Could someone just respond to that question, please?
Brett?
Thank you, Chair. So, Margaret, if you may, can you just confirm when the next planning committee is?
The next planning committee is, give me 1 second. It has to go through council, so it's not confirmed. So it's only a provisional, but I will give you that date. Just bear with me 1 second.
Mr. Leahy, whilst we do that, is there a section 106 attached to this application? Does Ms. Sullivan know the answer to that? I think the answer is yes, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I can also, sorry, jump in to help Mags, the 29th of April. Oh, sorry.
27th of
So members need to call an extraordinary planning meeting, which I think, as I understand...
Sorry, April. Beg your pardon.
You'll be fine doing that.
Yeah. But that is yet to be confirmed at council on the 25th of this month.
Sorry, the next planning committee is actually on the 29th of April, not 27th.
No, there was a move.
Okay.
And the move is the 27th of April, and that will all be confirmed on the 25th of the 3rd at full council this week.
Okay. So moving, Councillor Balmer, so having heard the motion and Councillor Duffel seconding it, and you had your response to the query you had, are you in support of the motion or against it?
Based on the information given, I will be against it.
Thank you, Councillor Balmer. Councillor Canal, obviously, your support is your motion. Councillor Chowdhury, are you in support of this motion or against?
I'm against, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Duffel, obviously you seconded that, so you're in support. Myself, I'm against this motion. Maggie. Councillor Merry.
I'm against the proposal, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Merry. Councillor Morgan Thomas.
I'm against the motion, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan Thomas. Councillor Prakash, are you in support or against this motion?
I'm against the motion, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Prakash. Councillor Patel, are you in support or against this motion?
Chair, I'm voting against the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Patel. Councillor Javed, are you in support or against this motion?
Chair, having listened to advice by the legal and planning department, I'm against the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Javed. Councillor Rashid, are you in support or against this motion?
I am against this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Rashid. Maggie?
The motion is denied.
Thank you. Thank you. Motion denied. Sadia, when you're ready with your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. I am about to share my presentation and will switch off my camera just to make sure there is no disruption.
Thank you.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
The first scheme in front of Planning Committee tonight is a development site between 43 and 45 Clarence Avenue and rear of Montrose House at 4112 to 4116 Eastern Avenue, Ilford. The proposal is for retention of Montrose House, erection of an 8-story plus basement building and 5-story building to provide 1,325.1 square meter of commercial floor space and 15 residential units with private and communal amenity space, children play space, cycle parking, wheelchair accessible parking, waste storage facilities, hard and soft landscaping, and associated works. The site is approximately 0.6 hectare and located between Eastern Avenue to the north and Clarence Avenue to the south. The site contains an existing 7-story building known as Montrose House and in use as a tertiary education facility named as Montrose College and a car park located to the rear of Montrose House. Pedestrian access into the site is from Eastern Avenue to the front and vehicle access is from Clarence Avenue to the rear. The site is in a highly sustainable location for mixed-use development and a very good level of accessibility with PTEL rating of 5 due to its proximity to the Ganshill Underground Station, which is within 1 minute walking distance. This is the aerial view of the site. The site is marked in red line boundary. To the immediate east of the site, there is a residential-led development comprising 105 residential flats and commercial floor space over 3 blocks, ranging in height from 3 to 7-story. To the west is also a 6-story mixed-use building known as Commercial House with retail on the ground floor and education use above. The surrounding area is mixed in character. A range of retail and commercial uses on the ground floor of properties near the Ganshill roundabout, located to the east of the site. Tall mixed-use development, which rises up to 10-story, largely comprising commercial units on the ground floor and residential flats above, are also along the roundabout's Eastern Avenue Park Road to the east of the site. To the west, north, and south of the site is bounded by predominantly residential development. This is another aerial view of the site showing its relationship with the immediate context. The site is marked in red line, and the station entrance is to the east of the site, marked in yellow. This is the photographic view of the site taken from Eastern Avenue. This is another photographic view of the site taken from Clarence Avenue. The application site has been designated as opportunity site in the Redbridge local plan. It falls within 2 opportunity sites, site 107 and 108. Both sites have been allocated to develop with commercial and residential uses. The application site has a planning permission which was approved in 2009 for a change of use of 6-story building and basement to education, training and office use. Condition 2 attached to this planning permission is to restrict the use of the car park for the members of the staff only. There is a live enforcement case in this matter. Condition 6 required a travel plan encouraging sustainable means of travel for the visitors and users of the college. The Green Travel Plan approved in 2018 stated that car parking on site is limited to 10 spaces with an additional 2 blue badge spaces to encourage sustainable travel modes. As members are aware, a similar scheme to this current application was refused in the Planning Committee on 19th November 2020 for 3 reasons. Since then, there are some significant changes in the planning policy. We have housing delivery test result published and the new London plan adopted. Due to the failure to meet the requirement of the housing delivery test and the absence of 5-year housing land supply, the borough is currently subject to the presumption in favor of sustainable development. The London Plan 2021 has introduced the following changes which are relevant for this development. These are increased annual housing delivery target for Redbridge to 1,409, modal shift towards sustainable mode of travel, new parking standards which include car-free development for all areas of Beetle 5 and 6. It makes it clear that the absence of current on-street parking control should not be used as a reason for refusal. Reason 1 of the previous refusal of the planning permission relates to the impact on natural light received by the college due to the loss of windows on the western flank wall. In order to address these reasons, the applicant submitted the existing layout of the college, daylight assessment of the college, examples of other college in proximity to the site which have classrooms with limited light. From the assessment of the information submitted and from the site visit, it is observed that only 3 out of 14 classrooms would experience notable reduction in light. All classrooms will have windows. These are the photographs showing northwest and southwest elevation of the college. Windows on the western elevation marked by red arrow will be removed. Windows on the other elevation marked by yellow arrows will remain. This is the ground floor layout of the college in relation to the proposed Block A. The proposed building is marked in red. In the college, all rooms would have unaffected primary windows to the front and rear as shown by the arrows. This is the first floor layout. It is noted that the college has same layout for first, second, and the 4th floor. All rooms retained windows as shown by the arrows. The room with the blue arrow also retain a window. The impact on this room is considered in detail in later slide. This is the photograph of the room I just mentioned. This is the first floor classroom along northwestern elevation, which will lose windows shown by the red arrows. However, it will retain windows shown by yellow arrows, which will provide good access to light and ventilation. The 4th floor of the college is a computer lab, a library, and a small office. All rooms will have primary windows as shown by the arrows. This is the 5th floor layout. There is no classroom on this floor. All rooms will have primary windows as shown by the arrows. The applicant submitted a BRE assessment. The study has been undertaken to assist understanding, but it is not directly applicable to this type of use. It is designed to assess living environments in homes. The front classroom meet the residential standard. The rear classroom fall below the residential standard, which is 2%. Only 3 out of 14 classrooms fall below the residential standard. The other 11 classrooms retain windows filling the full length of one of their walls. All rooms retain a window. The reduction in light to 3 rooms does not conflict with any relevant policies. It would likely necessitate an increased reliance on the artificial light, but it would not mean that an unacceptable quality of education would be provided. Reason 2 relates to the on-street car parking capacity to accommodate parking from the new development. To address this reason, the applicant conducted a parking survey covering all roads within 200-meter radius of walking distance. Survey dates are 8th and 11th December in the nighttime and 22nd of December in the daytime. Survey result shows adequate spare capacity on a street. By applying the car ownership ratio of 0.4 vehicle per home, the forecasted number of cars from the new development would be 6, 2 of which will be accommodated on site. In worst case scenario, there will be 4 cars on the street, which can be accommodated as shown by the parking survey. Reason 3 of the refusal relates to the impact on users of the college, especially the protected characteristics when assessing and aggressing the facility. In order to address this reason, the applicant submitted data from Higher Education Statistics Agency shows 50 students with unknown disability within 3 campuses of Montrose College. This includes learning difficulty, social communication impairment, long-standing illness, mental health condition, physical impairment or mobility issues, deaf and blind. The current scheme will propose 2 on-site wheelchair parking space. It will also provide a new step-free access from the rear to provide direct access to the college. During the site visit, we observed there are 10 standard spaces leveled at disabled bay on site. It means only 6 genuine wheelchair accessible bays could be accommodated in this designated space. The proposal will provide 2 spaces on site, 1 spaces on street for the commercial use, although it will also be available to the college should it be needed. Section 106 will secure a contribution towards the second on-street bay, which would be implemented should the need be demonstrated. On-site disabled parking for college shown by the red arrow, a condition will be attached to secure these spaces for the college only. Currently, the distance between the nearest disabled bay and the college is 70 meters for a wheelchair user. This will reduce to 22.8 meters as a result of the proposed platform lift, which will be secured by a condition. The proposed scheme will provide 41% of affordable housing, which will exceed the policy requirement of the Redbridge local plan. The current scheme complies with the Technical Housing Standard and London Planner Standard. It will provide communal amenity space and the children play space for the residential block. It will also provide communal amenity space for the commercial block and the existing college. The site has a PTAL rating of 5, meaning very good level of access to public transport. The current scheme will provide 2 on-site wheelchair parking for the residential block B, 2 on-site wheelchair parking for the existing college, and 2 on-street wheelchair car parking. The cycle parking is also being proposed within this scheme, which will comply with the policy. Before the submission of this application, the applicant conducted a consultation. They also contacted the students' union following their objection to the previous application. After the submission, this application has been subject to a public consultation by press notice, 2 site notices, and 141 individual letters. The scheme was also presented to the ward councillors and the members of the planning committee on 11th March 2021. This is the visual of the proposed Block A from Eastern Avenue. This is the visual of the proposed Block B from Terence Avenue. This is the ground floor plan for Block A and Block B. Communal amenity space has been designed between the buildings. Landscaping detail will be secured by condition. The scheme has several planning benefits, which includes sale of 41% of affordable housing, 2 apprenticeship, and 1 job for the local residents of Redbridge, affordable and flexible workspace, carbon offset financial contribution, Epping Forest financial contribution. It also includes resident parking permit restriction scheme, on-street disabled parking, car club, monitoring fee, and several highway works secured under Section 278. Before concluding, I would like to draw members' attention to the addendum report. The applicant has undertaken a review of the objection received for current and the previous application on this site and has concluded that some of the objections did not come from the addresses included in the objections letter. The council received a letter directly from the synagogue from 2A Clarence Avenue stating the objection received from this address for the previous application was not from them. Principal planning material consideration for this application are listed in this table. This is an allocated housing site in a very sustainable location. 41% affordable housing is included. The design is an appropriate scale and character for its surrounding. Access for disabled users of the college is improved. Even though on-site parking for staff is lost, parking for disabled users is provided on-site and parking provision is in accordance with the current policy. There is a reduction of natural light to 3 classrooms, but the other 11 are unaffected. The scheme is policy compliant in all other respects, and given the presumption in favor of residential development, permission is recommended. Thank you.
Thank you, Sadia. Committee members, do you have any questions to the planning officer in respect of the presentation? Councillor Barmer?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Can I check with you? Obviously, last time when we decided this one, there were, as you said, 4 main factors. I think the main one for me was parking for disabled students. Now, if I look at the document submitted by the union students, they are mentioning 22 severely disabled students. Can you confirm that is the number? In
Councillor Barmer, Councillor Barmer, can you refer to the presentation? We're not debating at the moment based on the presentation, not about other material information. Based on the presentation, if you've got any clarity to ask.
With respect to you, this was mentioned by the presenter. We're talking about parking. She mentioned the condition. So I'm questioning her on the condition which the presenter mentioned. So it's not from somewhere else, it's part of the presentation. So that is the question. Let me just carry on with the condition. The question is, from what I understand from that document, this premises was approved in August 2009. Now, my understanding from reading that document is within 10 years, if we don't enforce the conditions, then conditions do become null and void. Can you confirm that one? Because for 10 years, it appears we haven't taken any action. Have we got legal right at the moment to take that action to enforce that condition?
Councillor Barmer, what's the question specifically on the, what's your question to the officer?
Question to the officer is that condition which was set in 2009, we haven't enforced that one for 10 years. Are we now legally, do we have legal powers to enforce that after 10 years?
Okay. Brett, would you like to come in, or Andrew?
No, I'll hand over to Brett because he's closer to the.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair and members. So yeah, Councillor Barmer's questions in relation to the live enforcement case that we have with regard to the college. So I can give an update to members in regards to that live enforcement planning case. So we do have a live plan enforcement case with the college. As pointed out by Councillor Barmer, the college was given planning permission under plan application 1124/09, so given permission in 2009. The permission for the college was given on the basis of 6 planning conditions. The key condition is condition 2. So condition 2 states that car parking, and this is in relation to the college, should only be used for members of staff and not for students. This was put in place under that planning permission to protect the amenity of nearby residents. Now, we have identified, as noted by Councillor Bramah, that the college are in breach of that particular condition. Now, I'm not privy to the conversations that have been had in relation to Councillor Bramah and the college. What I can say is it's a live enforcement case. We are working with the college collaboratively to resolve this planning breach, and the dialogue between the college is constructive. However, we have not concluded, the planning authority has not concluded at this stage that they're not in breach. It's still a live conversation. So Councillor Bramah is referring to the fact that the college have put forward evidence to say that they've been in breach for 10 years. And by being in breach of their own planning permission, by default, they're no longer in breach because it's more than 10 years. That's not verified by us. We are working closely with them to seek how we can resolve this breach for them. So it's really important that members don't make their judgments on the basis that it's been in breach for more than 10 years. I want members just to be aware that basically it's a live planning enforcement case. We haven't concluded. We're still working with the college to resolve this for them in a collaborative, constructive way. Hope that answers the question, Chair and members. I'm happy to answer any further questions with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Councillor Bramah, if that answers your question, can you get your can you put your hand down, please? I'll go to.
Thank you. That came from the Students' Union. Their letters sent to by email.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Bramah. Brett has responded to your query. I've got Councillor Cannell followed by Councillor Merry. Councillor Cannell.
I'm grateful, Chair. I have, if I may, 3 questions to Sadia for what was, if I may say, an excellent presentation, very clear, and I'm very grateful to her. My first question is, could Sadia please confirm the parking survey took place during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown, and arguably therefore is of interesting value. Our second question is, could she please give us the number of disabled students that the college has given us in their most recent submission to us? And my third question is, would she be good enough to point to the technical assessment of light levels in each of the classrooms to which she referred? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cannell. Sadia, when you're ready. Councillor Bramah, do you have any more questions? If not, can you put your hand down, because it's a bit confusing. It doesn't show always whether it's a new hand or an old hand. Sadia, when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Cannell. In response to your query regarding parking survey, yes, it was done in December 2020, so meaning we were still in lockdown. However, the impact of lockdown on the parking survey, on that matter, I would like to refer it to our highway officer, Will. He would be able to explain how that impacts on the parking survey and whatnot. Will, would you be able to?
Yes, I mean, I think this question's come up before, hasn't it, at previous committees? I mean, the completely honest answer is we don't yet have enough data to know exactly how the current pandemic has affected, and the measures in response to that have affected parking occupancy. But the general sort of school of thinking is that it has resulted in, it's certainly not resulted in any reduction in on-street parking, because people are people are at home more. People aren't driving to work. They're not going out in the evenings visiting friends or leisure activities. So in respect of parking surveys in residential areas, in respect of residential developments such as this, my advice is that parking surveys undertaken at this current time are reliable and wouldn't be unduly prejudiced.
Thank you, Will. Sadia, in response to the other 2 questions?
Sure. The second question, if I remember it correctly, the number of disabled students in the college. So the data that we have in front of us is the data from Higher Education Statistics Agency that shows 15 students with unknown disabilities. So in that disabilities categories, as I mentioned in my presentation, there are various types. So we do not have exact number of the student which has physical impairment or mobility issue. But when we went on a site visit, we observed there are 10 standard parking bay which are labeled as disabled parking bay, but the wheelchair parking bay has larger in size, meaning that it's 6 wheelchair parking space can be fitted in that space. So based on that number, we made our assessment.
And in relation,
the third question is the result of the lights. Councillor, did you refer to the BREEAM assessment? The BRE assessment.
If I may, Chair, to assist Sadia, I'm assuming there's a technical assessment for each classroom. Is there a copy available to be displayed of the technical light assessment for each classroom?
So first of all, the only light assessment we can do in planning is the BRE assessment, and the BRE assessment is for the residential unit. It's not for the college. However, in order to understand the situation in terms of the lighting, the applicant has applied that assessment, which is published in our website as a report, which you would be able to view.
And is the applicant's assessment, since you've answered that question, is that a technical assessment made to the appropriate technical standards by a recognised external body?
Yes. Yes.
I'm grateful to you, Sadia. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cannell, and thank you, Sadia. Councillor Mary.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, firstly, can I thank the officers for the videos of the virtual site visit which they provided us with for this application, which I found to be very helpful, as I didn't really fancy myself wandering around inside a college building at the risk of catching some horrible disease. So I think that was a very helpful contribution from the officers. The specific point I'd like to raise is if Sadia could take us to the affordable housing offer, which I understand is above local plan target requirements. I didn't quite catch the breakdown of
41%.
Sorry, someone's talking over me, Chair. If Sadia, if you could just take us to the breakdown of unit size and the breakdown in affordability types.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Councillor Mary. Let me just share that screen. Sorry, it appears that I can't find the screen that I'm sharing. If you could just bear with me. So this is the affordable housing offer. So currently the affordable housing in percentage is 41%. So in terms of number, it would be 6 affordable home, which will include 4 London affordable rent and 2 London shared ownership. And our Redbridge local plan policy expectation for affordable housing is 35% at the moment, whereas the current this scheme will provide 41%.
Yep, sorry, the screen's very small and you ran through it a bit quickly first off. I'm trying to get to the breakdown.
Yeah, sure. Yep, so...
Thank you. So it's 3.5 BP. If you could run through this for those of us that don't understand.
Yeah, sure. It's the 4 affordable. So in that affordable housing mix, there will be 4 London affordable rent. And in that 4 affordable rent, there will be 1 3-bed 5% unit at the ground floor, then 1 3-bed 4% unit at the first floor, and 2-bed 3% unit at the first floor, and another 2-bed 4% unit at the first floor level. And in that 2 London shared ownership, is it's 1 bed 2% unit at the first and second floor level.
Okay, thank you. Got that.
Thanks.
Just to be clear, Ms. Nishu, what's the percentage of habitable rooms?
41.
Thank you.
Councillor Murray, does that answer your query?
Yep, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sadia. Thank you, Councillor Murray. I don't seem to see any more hands, so if not, I would like to call upon the applicant. Applicant is Alun Evans, the agent. Mr. Evans, when you're ready.
Yeah, good evening.
You got 2 minutes, Mr. Evans, so when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors, and thank you to your officer for that informative report to committee. The planning application was relatively recently presented, as you're all aware. We have sought to work with both the college, the local authority, to address the previously determined reasons for refusal. The 3 reasons, of course, referring firstly to the impact on the operation of the college. It is clear from the evidence provided that the loss of some of the windows does not prejudice the environment in which learning, particularly based on screens and the overhead projector, will occur. The second reason for refusal relates to the car parking. In fact, 2 of the survey dates of the 3 that were undertaken, 2 of those on the 8th and 11th of December, the full lockdown rules did not apply, and therefore the results are far more reflective of a conventional car parking survey. The third reason for refusal refers to the changes that have been specifically made in respect of that refusal reason, principally the provision of 2 dedicated, fully compliant wheelchair parking spaces on site for students, as well as the provision of step-free access for all students who care and who desire and who need to use that to access the college from Clarence Avenue, which of course does not currently exist. There is therefore presented to you, along with the other benefits the application delivers, including affordable housing, a material benefit in the accessibility credential of the college.
That's 2 minutes, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Thank you, Maggie. Members of the committee, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Me.
Councillor Javed.
Thank you. Ms. Evans, is a reference to police asking you to build by design. Are you in touch with the police as to how any changes to the application or the way the building is laid out and so on?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so the scheme architect has liaised directly with the Secure by Design liaison officer for the Metropolitan Police for this for Redbridge Borough, and the proposals have been designed in accordance with the standards that are required to meet that provision.
Thank you. My second question is with regards to the internal layout. I know
Councillor Javed.
Sorry.
We can't, sadly, I can't see you. Is there any way that you can turn on your video?
Oh, right, sorry.
Problem at all.
Is that better?
Much better, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, Mr. Evans. My second question was with regard to London Fire Brigade comments. They said they're satisfied. However, from the application, from the report, it's not clear if they would have had made any comments for internal layout. In the event of a fire, how would people get out? There's sufficient lighting, sufficient arrows showing like we see in the aeroplanes and so on. Would you please explain that? Thank you.
I could try, Councillor. Thank you for your question. The fire safety rulebook, if you like, is extremely detailed, and of course it should be, but it is generally speaking deferred to the building regulation requirement, which would be reviewed and analysed prior to physical building of the proposal if planning permission is forthcoming. In terms of an exit, there are designated fire exits to the front and to the rear, that is to Eastern Avenue and to the car park area facing Clarence Avenue, respectively. Neither of those exits are proposed to be altered in any way in respect of the proposals before you this evening.
Thank you, Chair. I'll come back to the officers later.
Thank you, Councillor Javed. Councillor Morgan Thomas.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I'm asking this question of the applicant because the officer mentioned it as one of the applicant's actions in her report, so I feel it's best addressed to you. I was a bit shocked by the addendum report that mentioned you having gone through as the applicant the submission to the previous consultation. I wondered if this was standard practice, and I won't go into what the results of them were because Sadia made that clear a little while ago. But is do you generally go through applications like the one in front of us tonight to check the veracity of the objections that are made? Is that standard practice for you as applicants?
Mr. Evans, can you hear? Are you able to respond to Councillor Morgan Thomas' query?
I think he may have frozen at the crucial moment.
Oh dear.
Right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Apologies. I'm sure I got the whole question. My response is there were a significant number of objections received in response to the first planning application, and there was a lengthy debate also ensued at committee. It's my duty on behalf of the applicant to understand why there appear to be a significant number of objections to a policy compliant, generally speaking, policy compliant proposal. In my experience of nearly 20 years acting as a planning consultant in London and across the UK, to be frank, I've never seen or witnessed this level of objection for a relatively policy compliant scheme. And of course, we had the previous reason for refusal, and what I wanted to undertake was to understand the background to the reasons for refusal and to all the further objections or previous objections, sorry, that were made in order to address those in preparing a revised planning application for the site. It's doing my homework effectively.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Councillor Morgan Thomas, does that answer your question?
Yes, I think it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Morgan Thomas. I've got Councillor Bamra, followed by Councillor Javed. Councillor Javed, is that a new hand or an old hand?
Sorry, Chair, I'm new and it's new hand.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Bamra first before I come to you. Councillor Bamra?
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Last time you came before the committee, you mentioned you couldn't contact the students. Were you able to contact them, speak to them, and resolve the issue regarding parking for disabled students?
I haven't spoken to individual students, nor I am aware that any individual students have written in respect of either planning application. You are aware there's an objection letter on both applications from the Montrose College Student Union. I undertook to speak to the chair of the student union, but they have respectfully declined my request to discuss their comments in respect of either application with them. We have discussed with the college management who operate the college, and of course there was the public consultation, including the website that was reactivated in order for any members of the public, including students or the student union, to provide comments to that avenue as well.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Councillor Bummer, if that's your question, can you put your hand down? I'll go to Councillor Javed, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Evans, sorry I missed out on this question. Could you please confirm how this block is going to be managed?
Which one? Sorry, the office accommodation or the residential accommodation?
Oh, sorry, the residential.
That will be managed in two ways. One, the private units that are for sale on the open market will be advertised and hopefully sold as such. The 6 affordable housing units to be secured and delivered as part of that will be transferred to a London Borough of Redbridge specific housing association partner who will then manage those units.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. I don't see any more hands, so I'll move on to the next speaker. We have Montrose Student Union representative as the objector against the application, Miss Lovejoy. Miss Lovejoy, when you're ready, you've got 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you can hear me.
Yes,
thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Application overlooking loss of privacy ability. Now, just starting with the disability, our objection is that disabled spaces being taken away. It's not really about what provide in relation to disabled spaces. There seems to be some confused facts. The students have provided the fact that there are 75 disabled severely physically impaired students.
Miss Lovejoy, you're breaking up. Miss Lovejoy, you're breaking up, but we can't hear you properly.
Oh, I do apologize.
Would you like to get the speaker near to you, clear, so probably that might help?
Is this any better?
Chair, I can't hear Miss Lovejoy, and it's really important that we do hear from her. Yeah. Is it worth going to the next objector, and then hopefully she can reset her connection?
That would be good. Miss Lovejoy.
Also, Andrew, Miss Lovejoy could ring in, which would be another option.
Mags, if you could provide
yeah,
that.
I think I will.
Miss Lovejoy, which option will you be taking? We will go to the next speaker while you get yourself sorted either to ring in or re-log in. Is that helpful?
I prefer to ring in, please.
Sorry?
I would prefer to ring in.
That would be fine.
Miss Lovejoy, I'll send you the phone number whilst we go to the next speaker.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Miss Lovejoy. In the meantime, I'll ask the next speaker who's against the application, Mr. Ahmed, Redbridge Guns Hill Residents Association, I gather. Mr. Ahmed, when you're ready, you've got 2 minutes.
Hi, this is Ahmed. I live on Clarence Avenue, and actually I'm the person actually who's gonna suffer from the congestion, whatever will be in the future after the building of this this construction. And I'm actually feeling sad because of I raised previously my concern, and which I believe are not heard actually, because the applicant has just increased one more disabled parking, right? So the rest of the students, I don't know how many, they are gonna park up in the street, and the 15 families more who are actually coming in after the building this site. I don't know where they're gonna park. If you look every day, the council is penalizing for the people who actually don't park properly, and that penalty charge is equal to nearly or equal to a day wage, which is actually already too much. And my actually concern is, I live with my family, I live with my wife and kids, and for me to find a parking 10 minutes far from my house and then come back to my house, it's very difficult, especially if I have my kids with me and I have a grocery with me, everything. So I'm totally against this this application, and I would request to consider the practicality which is going to be which we are going to face as a resident of Clarence Avenue. I really oppose this application because this will be a nightmare for us, and it will be like, I feel like I am actually, as a resident of Clarence Avenue, treated like rats. It will be very congested, and I'm sitting in front of elected people actually who understand the pulse of the people, that if we are suffering, to whom we should say? We can say the authorities. And we are actually requesting in front of authorities that look our basic problems. And I would request you to consider that. And I really.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. You made it very clear. Members of the committee, do you have any questions for the speaker? No. Okay, thank you, Mr. Ahmed. I would now like to call upon our next speaker, Ms. Lovejoy. Are you able to join us? Ms. Lovejoy? If not, I've got another.
Okay, Chair. Miss Lovejoy's been sent the number and the ID of the conference number. I think she's probably ringing in right now.
Okay.
If you can hear me, I am ringing in right now.
Great. Okay. Can you join us now?
We can hear you.
Councillor Thomas, you may have a...
Can you hear me?
Right,
yes, we can.
Yeah, you can. Okay. Thank you. I do apologize for that. I don't know what happened. When does my 2 minutes start?
When you're ready.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Again, as we've said, we object because we think the birth impacts are significant and in relation to development. We're objecting on the lighting, the disabled parking, the overbearing, the positioning of block A. Just to speak about the disabled parking, obviously we object because the students' disabled parking is being removed. There seems to be how many disabled students there are. The college has provided information that it's 75 disabled students, 15 of those who are severely physically impaired. There are 10 spaces regardless of size. So I think that's the facts that members have to be sure of before making a decision. As for the breach of condition, the members reminded us that the college says that the use is not lawful. Whether or not it is lawful, it still remains that disabled parking is being taken away from the students. Enforcement is discretionary. The council could enforce at any time, and it's choosing to enforce now. It of course has to enforce for the right reasons. What we say is that this development is not only contrary to policy in that sense, but members should exercise their and members' duty to exercise their public equality considerations. It's not for the officer to exercise and impose it on members. It's for members to exercise it. And we say that the removal of these car parking spaces, this development, is discriminatory and disproportionate, and therefore it should be. And then we come on to lighting. Again, there seems to be a factual dispute as to how many rooms are being affected. 26 relates to tall buildings, lighting from tall buildings. This is a symptom of the inadequate position of the
time, Chair.
Ms. Lovejoy, we managed to just about get the information through. It's been very difficult, and I'm sure my colleagues here will say the same, but I think we just about got the information. Members of the committee, do you have any questions from Ms. Lovejoy? I've got Councillor Cannell.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Lovejoy, for persevering. I'm assuming you're calling from outside of the solar system, given the quality of the call. So I shall speak slowly. Hopefully you can hear me. I have a couple of questions, please. The first question is, there is some debate over the number of disabled students at the Gants Hill building. Can you confirm the number of disabled students that attend that building, Montrose House? And can you confirm the number that have physical disabilities for whom access from the car park is important? My second question is that you said in your view the development is discriminatory and disproportionate. Could you outline on what grounds you believe that's the case? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. In respect of the number of disabled students, my instructions are the latest information the student union has provided, which is 75 disabled students and 15 of those which are severely impaired. Now, that's the information I have, which was in the public domain, has been in the public domain for at least a week. And then in relation, sorry, Councillor, does that answer your first question?
Yeah, that's a matter of record now, and I thank you for it. The second question concerned the discriminatory disproportionate effect of the development. Why you think that's the case?
The second question, okay, thank you, Councillor. The second question, equality duty and members' consideration, and obviously this is a primary consideration which is separate from the planning consideration, and I've sent notes which set what the duty is. One of it is to advance access to prevent discrimination. What I'm saying is that removing 10 car parking spaces which enable disabled people to access the college and therefore higher education is disproportionately discriminatory in this case, and that members should exercise their considerations against this.
Okay.
In all sense.
Chair, your microphone's on. That's causing feedback and causing you to cut out. If you turn off your microphone, we may be able to hear Ms. Lovejoy properly, possibly.
Oh, all right. Did you hear that? Essentially, just to wrap, if people can indicate if they can hear me. Okay. Just to round up, I'm saying in the circumstances of ourselves, the development, the fact that in our view, it's a poor design, poor location, and for the sake of development, to remove 10 parking spaces, which enable students to access this college, which prides itself on its access to disabled students, has a disproportionately discriminatory effect on the disabled students. So therefore, in respect of the members exercising their considerations in relation to the public, application should be refused.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cannell. If that's your question, Councillor Cannell, if you don't mind putting your hand down. I've got Councillor Barmera followed by Councillor Merry. Councillor Barmera.
My question has been answered. It was the same question which Paul asked. So
thank you, Councillor Barmera. In that case, I'll go to Councillor Merry. If you don't mind putting your hand down, Councillor Barmera. Councillor Merry, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not too sure the speaker actually answered Councillor Cannell's question there, which I took to be how many students actually on the Gants Hill site have mobility problems, and nothing that I've seen or heard has given me any answer to that. All I've seen is this figure of 75 students across 3 sites. So I'm somewhat sceptical about these figures.
to council, my instructions are that disabled students, all the disabled students concentrated on in this site, and the site is being a sort of welcome haven disabled students to access Montrose College. So my latest I have, or to put it another way, my instructions are there are at least 75 and 15 students at this college, at this site, who are severely physically impaired, so as to require the car parking spaces. Obviously, I've received a bit more detail on how the college operates that, if you're interested, councillor. But the figure that, in answer to your question, is 50 physically impaired students at this site.
Okay, so the figure is 15, and all 15 of these drive their own cars and required to park them on the site. That's what I'm expected to believe.
Those and that actually sort of again is one of the nature of their physical impairment, the fact that they find it difficult to access public transport. So they have welcomed these car parking spaces.
So you can't tell me how many.
I understand. Drive their own cars.
Okay, I hear what you say, but you're telling me all 15 of these students drive their own cars to the site and quiet park it. None of them arrive by taxi or by dial-a-ride. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor Mary. I've got Councillor Duffel followed by Councillor Prakash. Councillor Duffel first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms Lovejoy, for your presentation. I've just got one question. At the end of your 2-minute speech, you were going to say something about the lighting assessment, and it cut out towards the end. Could you just repeat the final, I'm guessing, paragraph of what you were outlining on the lighting assessment?
I was just outlining about the lighting assessment is, first of all, it clearly, we all agree that it clearly blocks out light to the college. Of the back position close to the college to block out an entire elevation. That's contrary to policy LP26, which is a policy that relates to tall building and addresses this very issue of blocking out of light. So, those to me are the baseline facts. What seems to be in dispute are how many classrooms are being blocked out, and whether or not people who go to higher education need natural sunlight. To me, that doesn't appear to be the thrust of the policy, but that appears to be what's in dispute. And of course, what is the appropriate assessment, the appropriate scientific assessment for measuring how much light is blocked out? It seems to me councillors are missing some very relevant facts. But if councillors are going to make a decision today, and of course they've got to be careful to make it all on the relevant facts, my assumptions are that this development is clearly against policy LP26, which seeks to protect the loss of sunlight from tall buildings.
Thank you, Mr. Lovejoy. Councillor Duffel, do you have any more questions? If not, I would like to, if you don't mind putting your hand down, I'd like to go to Councillor Prakash. Councillor Prakash, when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask the director, Montrose College is the provider of education to the student, and it's the students' union to who you are representing today. Don't you think that the Montrose College have an obligation to serve the students there? And we can't see anything in the report in detail. The questions we are asking, we're not getting the answers. So how are you going to speak on behalf of the provider of education in Montrose College?
Thank you very much for that question, Councillor. I am instructed just by Montrose Student Union. I'm not instructed by the council, sorry, by the college. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lovejoy. Thank you, Councillor Prakash. I don't seem to have any more hands. So in that case, I would like to go to the next speaker, Councillor Mushtaq Ahmed. Councillor Mushtaq Ahmed, when you're ready, you've got 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. And I will be short. I did attend the consultation from the developer. And I think by looking at the new plans and the old plans, I did not see any difference except that they are adding these 2 additional disabled car parking spaces. And I think committee did discuss this last time, all the issues related to this planning application, whether that was the lighting issue to the classroom, parking issues, all those concerns. I think there were deliberations, but what I saw in this new application, that we are just giving 2 additional parking spaces. And I think me as a ward councillor and listening to the residents, I think this is not something which is going to have sustainable development, because you are impacting the existing college, and then at the same time you are like having these units in that tower. I think the tower is the main concern to me, because it's like no space on the both sides of those buildings, and at the same time it's like the existing use that is impacted as well. Thank you very much. Chair, you are
Chair, you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Committee members, do you have any questions for Councillor Ahmed? I don't seem to see any hands.
Chair, Chair, I don't know if you want to hear from me in terms of any response to the lawyer that presented.
Yes, please. Sorry, I was going to, yeah, okay. Before we go to Councillor Cannell, we got legal representation from the student union, and I think it might be useful before we move to the next questions to hear the council's legal representative's view as well. Thank you, Andrew, when you're ready.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, Councillor Cannell, to interrupt. Simply, all I was going to say is that some of what you've heard this evening, particularly from objectors generally, specifically the lawyer, is interesting, but none of it should be regarded as material by yourselves. There were suggestions, as I understand it, of factual disputes. None of the information has been provided to members in relation to those factual disputes. Mr. Howe, the highways officer, has asserted and assessed the number of disabled students based on a worst case scenario, and that's how he's come to his judgment. I have to defer to the planning members, effectively the planners instructed by the council in relation to issues of planning, so as in planning officers and planning members, but I can fully comment on issues of equality impact. The local planning authority are bound to consider impact on those with protected characteristics, and have in this case determined that this scheme will in fact benefit those with those protected characteristics, specifically those with disabilities. Members will note, for example, the lift provided at the rear of the premises. As such, planners have undertaken a full, proper and necessary equality impact assessment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Sorry, Councillor Cannell. Do you have, before we go to Councillor Cannell, is there any questions for Andrew? No. Councillor Canal, when you're ready.
I'm grateful, Chair, and I'm grateful to Councillor Mushtaq Ahmed for his contribution. This, of course, is the second time he's come to make a submission on this application. I'd like to ask him about the parking survey. We've had presented to us a parking survey which took place during the COVID-19 pandemic. He is both a local resident and a local councillor. I would like to know his view as to whether he feels that a parking survey taken at this time does actually represent the issues concerning parking in that area for his residents. Thank you.
Councillor Ahmed, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Canal, for your question. Means, as all of us know, because I think any survey taken in last year means that that cannot give us the correct results. Means, having said that, means officers who have done the survey, they must have taken some kind of contingency into the survey and given the results which are in line with the real situation. But if you ask me, the traffic in past year or so, I think that's something we cannot say that that is going to be like something which is like close to the real world, because people are less driving, people are working more, and the traffic either is like Ganshill in Redbridge, wherever, except there were like these some roadworks going on for a 6 over the weekend, which has caused a bit of disruption. But otherwise, I think it's a lot more like less traffic, but what we have seen in past 12 months or so.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. I don't see any more hands. In that case, I would like to move on to the next item of discussion, debate and comments. So who would like to start the debate or comments? I've got Councillor Hannah Chowdhury, followed by Councillor Mary. Councillor Chowdhury.
Chair, could I put a question to one of the officers, if I may?
Yes, of course. What's your question?
It follows on from what Councillor Duffel was asking earlier about lighting. Can somebody just provide me with a bit of clarity around the day-night sunlight situation? I just want to know how many classrooms exactly would be impacted by reduced lighting.
Sadia, would you like to come in here and respond to Councillor Chowdhury's query?
Yeah, sure. Let me share my presentation again so it would be easy to explain. Bear with me. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Can you enlarge it, please?
Yeah, I will.
Much better, thank you. Okay. Yeah.
So the classroom that will experience a notable reduction in light is this classroom, the marked in blue arrow. So this is one classroom at the first floor, and the layout of the second and fourth floor is same. So that makes it total in 3 in the entire building. Councillor Chowdhury, is there any question?
Councillor Chowdhury, does that help you to understand? Does that respond to your query? Councillor Chowdhury?
It's just 3 classrooms that would be affected by reduced lighting, right?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
You're freezing up.
Is it just 3 classrooms?
Yes.
Is it just 3 classrooms that will be affected by reduced lighting?
3 classrooms will.
Yeah. So how many classrooms are there in total?
It's 14 in total.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Okay. I've got Councillor Mary.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's been quite a useful debate tonight, and I'm quite happy on the balance of material planning considerations that I will be voting in favour of this application. I'd like to thank the applicant for bringing this rejigged application back to committee rather than going to planning appeal and negotiating with our officers. I particularly want to commend them on the level of their affordable housing offer, which is all of the more importance to us at the moment, as we are in a position now where we've failed the housing delivery test and are in deep trouble on that front. I want to commend them also on the improvements to access for people with disabilities that they've proposed by means of the new access from the rear of the building. And I think personally that they've resolved the issue of the reasonable level of provision for students attending the college with a mobility problem. So I have no reservations at this stage on supporting the officer's recommendations to accept the application.
Thank you, Councillor Mary. Councillor Javed.
Thank you, Chair. Having listened to wide-ranging views and comments, I am minded to support this application. In my view, as the officer said, it's a sustainable location, and for me, accessibility to any site is crucial, as is this one, well served by public transport, buses and trains, and the infrastructure and the community facilities. There are shops, there are community facilities, like a synagogue and place of worship in nearby facilities. And all of those things, in my view, are essential for any development, residential development. This development offers that. And the only concern that I had, which I asked earlier, was the LFB comment with regards to the fire escapes internally. Yes, it meets the requirements externally, yeah, you have stairs and so on, but what happens inside if there is a fire in a block in the middle of the, if you like, your floor? It's pitch dark, you can't see which direction to go to. Now I would like to be reassured by the officers that when they come to look at the building regulation side of it, to ensure that there are lighting either along the on the wall on each floor or on the floor, so that in the event of a fire, I hope not, but in the event of a fire, those who live there can find their easy way to the access point, be it stairs or the lift. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Javed. Officers, can anybody respond to that? I'll come
Sorry,
to
Councillor. Can you repeat the question, please?
It was about fire regulation and ensuring that inside the building will there be any protective measures in place by building regulation in relation to, if God forbid, if there is a fire, how people are able to escape.
So regarding the fire safety, we did consulted London Fire Brigade, and they did not raise any concern. They said that they are satisfied with the layout. Also, we do have a additional condition that requires the applicant to submit as a pre-commencement condition to submit the fire strategy, which we will be consulted with for London Fire Brigade again at that stage. And also there are some fire protection measures which would be secured under the building control regulation, which is slightly outside of the planning at this stage.
Chair, did I hear the officer say that would be one of the conditions?
Yes.
Yeah, so that, okay, so that the applicant would have to furnish all of the detail as to how. And my
correct.
particular concern, if I missed it earlier, or you heard Sadia, which is that, yes, you would have access stairs, you would have a lift, but if you're in the middle of on a floor, it is pitch dark, how would you know which direction to go to? And my point is that there should be lighting of some sort, as we see in the aeroplanes, as to which way you go. And please ensure that, put it in condition, and when it comes to building regulations, they make sure that that is the case.
Yes, absolutely. These are all secured by the condition. One is the lighting strategy, and also another one is the fire strategy, which would be discharged at later stage.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Javed. Thank you, Sadi. I've got Councillor Balmer, followed by Councillor Morgan Thomas, and then Councillor Prakash. So Councillor Balmer first.
Thank you. My main concern is the confusion regarding how many disabled students are there. Obviously, we heard different figures. And number two is, which is more important, how many severely disabled students who require parking are there? Looking at the documents from the Students' Union, they are talking about 22. Sadi is talking about 15. And then we had a solicitor, the lawyer, talking about 15. So I don't know what number is there and whether they all need parking. In which case, if they all need parking, what will happen to the 13 or 15 students who will need to park outside? Is that going to have impact on the parking situation in Clarence Avenue and nearby roads? Those are my concerns. Other than that, lighting, I think, has been resolved, provided it is a report issued by a professional body, which appears to be. That is my concern, which are not major concern, but those are the concerns that I have regarding this application.
Okay, Councillor Balmer, thank you. I've got Councillor Morgan Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. In hearing this application, I feel it's been a bit of a danger on all sides from objectors and in fact, possibly also the applicant and some members of the committee. I speak as someone who wasn't on the committee when the previous application came to committee, and of course it is a separate application, and I appreciate a lot of the context about it has been based on what the differences are between the application in front of us tonight and the one that came previously. But I think it is important that it is a separate application, and I've dwelt quite a lot on what apparently the differences are, and I'm not sure, particularly the objectors have commented on those or indeed seem to acknowledge they exist. I think we're in a very strange position where I appreciate I did have to listen very carefully to Ms. Lovejoy to make sure we didn't miss too many of the student union objections, but where the objections on the use of the college facility seem to come from a student body and not from the report and from everything officers have said, actually from those who run the college itself, which I think is particularly relevant in terms of the light factor. It did also seem from the report, despite what Ms. Lovejoy and other objectors have said, that there is a net gain in actually properly accessible parking bays through the proposal, two specifically for the college and others factored in terms of the impact on-street parking, which, as the report points out, should be the only impact on on-street parking, given the very, very high accessibility levels of the site for anyone using it as a college or indeed for residential accommodation. And I think on balance, that means that the impact of the development is not harmful compared to its benefits, and particularly in terms of the weighted balance that we have to take into account for any residential development, which obviously part of this application is. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan Thomas. I've got Councillor Prakash, followed by Councillor Cannell. Councillor Prakash, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask one question from the officer because I want to be fully satisfied with the answer, you know. My question to the officer is education use. I want to mention the local plan and our policy. What it says is, I read that paragraph, which is on page 65 on the agenda. What it says is that the current rental policy 3.18 and the intend to publish London Plan Policy 53 supports the provision of education and childcare facilities. Local Plan Policy LP 17 supports the delivery of appropriate community infrastructure, including education, health facility, etc. And states new community facilities should be in or on the edge of the borough.
Councillor
Town centers. Where there is loss of facility, it should be appropriately justified or re-provided. And I want to know from the officer that LP 17, does it outweigh the housing delivery test, financial viability assessment, and section 106 or sell to compensate affordable housing? And so LP 17 regarding the Equality Act of 2010, in your opinion, don't you think it outweighs other things as well? That's my first question.
Prakash, are you not out of time? This is now debate. Are you sure you want to start asking questions now? I defer to the chair on this point.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to just step in. Councillor Prakash, we're in a debate and commenting now. We've asked necessary questions already to officers, the applicant and the objectors. So we're debating now and making statements and comments. So do you have anything specific to comment on?
So I can't get the answer. No?
Not at this stage.
Okay, not at this stage. Because we didn't get the information which we wanted, because at present I will support this application, but I propose something that if we put an informative, if the application is approved, then the applicant and the Montrose must sit together, and the planning department should negotiate breach of their enforcement for 10 years and reach an agreement. I wanted this
Councillor
to put in there as an informative, which is not binding.
Councillor Prakash, I think Brett already touched based on that earlier on to say there's a live enforcement case at the moment, and he couldn't go in details, but they are in discussion with Montrose College already on that issue, but due to technical reason couldn't go in details.
But here we can put informative.
Chair, shall we invite Brett to make a comment?
Brett, would you mind stepping in here?
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so in terms of the enforcement case, yeah, we're in live conversations. We want to work collaboratively with the college to resolve these issues. So we'll continually try to work with the college to, resolve matters collaboratively. So that's something we want to do anyway, and something we'll be doing through that particular process. I'm not entirely sure the merits of adding the informative in terms of that live enforcement case with this particular plan application. Yeah, I don't know if that helps at all, Councillor Parkesh. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Councillor Prakash. I'm just mindful, we do have another application. So if Councillor Cannell, is this a legacy hand or is it a new hand?
Oh, it's a new hand, Chair. It's a new, fresh, vibrant, enthusiastic hand.
Okay, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to make a small contribution. And to quote the late Yogi Berra, it's deja vu all over again. If this development, Chair, was anywhere else in the borough, I suspect I would support it. And I can genuinely understand why other councillors tonight are leaning towards voting in favour of this application for the reasons that have been carefully articulated. But I would respectfully urge them to pause and reconsider. Some of the members here tonight were, of course, involved in our lengthy debate last year. Though I do note that, curiously, several members who voted against or abstained have been replaced. It's for others to comment on why that has happened. And to quote another great sage, John Maynard Keynes said, "When the facts change, I change my mind." But, Chair, the facts in the application have not changed. It is, to all intents and purposes, the same application. LP 27 is still engaged, Local Planning Policy 27, to protect and promote educational institutions. This, Chair, is the only HE higher education institution in the borough, an institution whose success is fundamentally threatened by this development. In LP7, isn't just engaged, it's embraced, it's at the heart of this debate. It's also the institution in East London, I would argue, with the highest number of BAME and disabled students. And as was carefully pointed out by Sadia in her excellent presentation, they are those with a protected characteristic, and we are obliged to consider their needs in the broader context of planning decisions. I won't dwell on the curiously timed enforcement action over the car park. I'm not quite sure why we've chosen to issue an enforcement notice to a car park that's been shut for 12 months, and whether it's to do with this application or not, I'm sure Mr. Lee can pass a view on that at some other time. But I am going to go back to, we've all been under a re-education camp over the first 3 months of this year with a plethora of training sessions. And one of the training sessions, we were advised that previous decisions were relevant considerations. We agonised over an even longer period of time in 2020 about this application. We had a robust conversation over the minutes, which in the end were corrected to accurately record our decision. I think that was the right decision at that time by a committee that very carefully considered all the facts. And at that time, after great thought, I chose to vote against this development on the grounds of the threat to the college and the threat to those from the BAME community and the threat to disabled students. I think I was right then, and therefore I'm going to vote the same way tonight. And I'm going to vote against this application. And I'd urge those of you who are considering support it to consider the college, to consider the students, to consider the BAME community and our disabled students who are denied access to education elsewhere in East London, and to also reinforce our decision of last year and to vote against the application again. Chair, I thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cannell. I would now like to move on to the voting. I will be asking individual councillors in alphabetical order that they heard the full content of the discussion. And
Chair, sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry, Councillor Jabez.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. Councillor Cannell alluded to the fact that new person, I'm new tonight, that I am part of some conspiracy. Well, I'm not. And
I appreciate that. Councillor Cannell, I did apologise for that, Councillor Jabez, and I'm sorry about the comment. Councillor Cannell, I did point out in the beginning of the session that the reason Councillor Jabez and deputised because Councillor Singbola felt conflict of interest and Councillor Ali is not well, and hence this is why we've got Councillor Rashid subbing for Councillor Ali. There was no conspiracy theory behind it, and so apologies for individual colleagues who felt offended by this. Thank you.
With respect, so I never used the word conspiracy. It never entered my vocabulary or my mind. No. And I'm intrigued that other institutions. I did not say that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think we should move. Okay. I'm fed up of Councillor Cannell interrupting in this way. Can we move to the vote, please, Chair?
Yes, please. Yes. So, members of the committee, I will be